Times Influence Initiative.
On the quest to educate India's investor community, NSE Prosperous India pit stopped at Silicon City, Bangalore, where experts shared their insights and experiences on following the fundamental principles while investing in the stock market.
Since the reforms from 1992 till now, if you look at the FD base, from 5 lakh crore, today it has gone beyond 30 lakh crore, which means just look at the sheer volume of money that we have saved and invested in FD. Now, I am not arguing for or against FD, but here is an instrument, the stock markets or the equities, where whatever you invest, if you are a long-term investor, then actually your returns are tax-free. The trend is typically upward because India is a growing economy. If I can share one more data with you, in 2018, India became the 6th largest economy in the world, and the total size of Indian market is 2.6 to 2.7 trillion dollars. Now what is expected is that in next 7 to 8 years, India will be in the top 5 economies or top 4 economies of the world, because this 2.6 or 2.7 trillion is going to go beyond 5 trillion dollars. So Indian economy will almost double from where we are. But the question is, if Indian economy is going to double, is your wealth going to grow 2x in next 7 to 8 years? Maybe not, because we obviously have our own inflation, we have our own requirements, the daily expenditure or the monthly expenditure that we do. And the second is the investment habit. So like I said, we have a very strong foundation because we are a country which is very good at savings. Now what we need to change is the habit of investing. And I think that is where initiatives like Prosperous India and the responsibility of creating this change lies with the institutions like National Stock Exchange and Times Network. Because somewhere we believe that we can, if we really want, we can create that change in the habit of the way people invest and make India more prosperous. Typically, people look at stock markets as a sort of gamble or a casino. It is never on their priority list. When people start earning money and they start investing, the first thing that they will do is probably take insurance policies, then they will look at FDs, then they will look at some other government savings certificate or government schemes. Gold is a huge draw. Indians do invest a lot in gold. And then people start thinking when they cross 30, 35, they start thinking of buying on their own home. So equity somewhere lags behind, because even today, the wealth being invested in equity markets in India or the instruments related to equity markets is less than 5% or somewhere around 5% of what we invest as a nation in various instruments. So there is a huge scope for growth, and I think if we as Indians don't take advantage of this opportunity called India, then the loss is ours, because foreigners will come, they will invest because they probably have more understanding and more confidence in India's story than probably we ourselves do. So our idea is not to push you towards equity, but enlighten you and inform you that, okay, here is an instrument where you can invest, and probably if invested wisely, then you can make risk-free returns, solid returns, and maybe ensure a much better future for your next generation.
What other people's mistakes are, if you'd make sure that those mistakes you don't repeat. And I can see very young crowd, right? So if you can understand what are the mistakes, write them down and avoid them. What are the right things which other people do, and you do that yourself, then automatically prosperity will be on your side. So point 2, which I'm making, the biggest mistakes people do is they start the journey without defining the expected end point. I, as an advisor, can just tell you, the better thing is to put an objective. So what should be objective? Objective should be, first objective, should be to make sure that you beat inflation. First objective should be inflation, महंगाई, price rise. Objective 2, keep a target. How much money will I need? Should you have a target? Should you have a target or not? Because if you don't have a target, let's assume you all retire and I retire. The money you will need, today if your expense is 20,000 rupees a month, you will need, to buy the same thing, you will need 2 lakh rupees after 20 years. If you don't plan for such a big disaster, then your financials can never be good. If you put number, then you will know how much to save. Otherwise, you will spend all your money. So that's point 2. Objective 3 is to look at tax efficiency. So tax is also a very important objective when it comes to investing, right? So these are the objectives. Then let me give you some principles. Invest for the long term. This, if you don't do, then you will lose money. Okay, invest for long term. Start early. Now let me give you an example. 1,000 rupees. If you invested monthly for the next 30 years, 1,000 rupees is not a very big amount. If you invested monthly for 30 years, what will be the value of that 30 years, 1,000 rupee monthly investment? If you earn 14-15%, it will be 55 lakh rupees. Now somebody will say, I am only 25 years, let me start 5 years later. If you delay it by 5 years, now you have how many years to invest? 25, not 30, because you've delayed by 5 years. The value of 55 lakhs will no more be 55 lakhs, it will become 27 lakhs. So how much did it cost you? 5 years delay costed you half the amount. Third learning is that don't check anything every day. Don't check price every day. Stay invested. What is equity? What is equity? Equity word is nothing but becoming partner to a big company. And then comes NSE, says I will help you, help every nook and corner of the country to become partners with the top 50 companies using Nifty. And we Indians are not using that opportunity to become partners with people whom we have no contact with. Right? So please use equity, because only 2 things can beat inflation. What can beat you inflation? Deposits can't beat inflation. FD cannot beat inflation. This is a 20-year data. You can't beat inflation with an FD. So you can beat inflation with only 2 classes, asset classes, equity and real estate. Equity 0 is not making so much sense. Real estate 60%, 70%, that's the data. Globally, real estate nal ಎಷ್ಟು ದುಡ್ಡು ಹಾಕ್ತಾರೆ? 18%. They put only 18% in real estate globally. We put 60-70%. We buy gold, right? We don't buy equity at all. So please use equity, because equity has the potential to beat inflation. And if your objective is to beat inflation, you have no choice but to use equity. It's not if I have an objective of beating inflation, I have to buy real estate or equity. Gold and deposits cannot beat inflation. It has been time tested.
Moving ahead, Feroz Aziz of Anand Rathi Financial Services sat down for a fireside chat with Mihir Bhatt to discuss the basic fundamentals of investing in stock markets.
People call themselves a long-term investor, and then like you said, they start looking at daily movement of markets and start reacting to it. How do you prevent that? How do you control that?
See, how do you prevent human behavior? By only putting discipline. Right? So human behavior can be controlled by internal discipline. See, it's very difficult to outsmart everybody else. You cannot become the smartest man. Not so easy, because there'll be just one smartest man. But being more disciplined than other people is very easy. So what is the discipline you follow? You put time frames of when I will review my portfolio. Before you start a company, don't you put the rules of the company? You put policies, HR policy is there, this policy is there, that policy is there. Investing is an important activity. Should you put your policies? What is my policy? I recommend that once a year you need to review your portfolio, not 365 days. Okay, how many times a year? Once a year, right? Second, you need to see if there are some crucial changes. Like if you have invested in a mutual fund, fund manager changed. Mutual fund, if you invest and fund manager changes, that calls for an action. So you need to write down what is your policy of action. If you did that, so point one, if you made sure that you review your portfolio once a year, unless there is something so dramatic, structurally changed, you don't need to review it, right? But review is something which we do more often than needed.
You know, when we interact with market experts or even investors, one thing they have on mind is volatility. What is your advice to an investor who has probably still not started investing? Should he wait or should he grab the opportunity?
It can be a threat or an opportunity, depends on how you use it. How do you make it an opportunity? Okay, you make it an opportunity by making it work for you. How do you make? There are three things when it comes to this whole volatility, which is utar chadhav, they call it in Hindi. Point one, if you buy one company, then it will go up and down. If you buy 20 companies, it will go up and down lesser, because there are some which will go up, there will some which will go down. If you buy 50 companies, then half of them will go up, half of them will go down at a point in time, and it will be lesser volatile. Okay, so one is diversification. Don't buy one company, two companies. Buy 30, 40, 50 companies. Why? Because you need this money for not partying. You need this money to live a life post-retirement. So that's very important money, na? So one is diversification. Second is, am I the expert? All of us do some job. Is there somebody else who can do this job for me better for a small fee? Then you use a platform like a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund. On NSE, there are exchange traded funds where there is outsourcing. Today, if there is a maid coming to my house, because I know I can outsource my work, I don't want to spend that time, I can outsource it to somebody else and pay them the money. Should investing be outsourced or you should do it yourself? Question is yours. So how do you make sure volatility works for you? Is by outsourcing it to an expert who has seen volatility for 20 years and it is his full-time job, right? Because if there is one person doing it 24/7, how can I be better than him by doing it for half an hour a day? So SIP is the third idea. Don't invest all your money at once. Invest it in a staggered fashion to make sure that you use volatility in your favor, diversification, fund manager, and lastly, SIP. If you did these three things, volatility, like Mihir Saab said, is an opportunity. If you don't do these three things, it is something which you should be afraid of. Otherwise, it's your friend.
You know, if we were to predict a trend for 2019 or let's say even 2020, can we safely say that now we are looking somewhere at a zone where India may end up delivering one of the best possible equity returns in the recent times, if not, let's say, the entire history?
See, every action of yours should be derived out of data. That's the key principle. He's saying whenever the Goras sell, the foreigners sell, in 2018, who sold? They sold. Foreigners sold our equity. We as Indians bought our equity. Every time this has happened, so Mir is saying that next year return is very good, which I think is a very, very startling data. So I think if history has story to say and if there is some merit you have to give to history, I would say 2019 is a good year, expected. Right? So if 2018 is bad, it is likely that 2019 and 20 will be good. Just like 2017 was good, 2018 was not very, very good. Because 2017 gave you 28% return on Nifty. Nifty 50 went up by 28%. Next year it didn't go up that much. It went up only 4-5%. Now the next, but it's 2019. Of course, if you have to give any merit to history, I would like to believe that 2019 is going to be a good year. Two reasons why. Because today, last 10 years, the foreigners funded us. But today, you won't believe, people like you and me put 1,000, 2,000 rupees every month. And you know how much money comes in mutual fund? In SIP? 8,000 crores every month comes in the form of SIP. So this is a clear trend. The clear trend is investor education in India is going to have huge emphasis. We will have several new investors like you and me, and that will mean that every month equity markets will get 8 to 10,000 to 15,000 crores in a matter of time. This 8,000 crores, which is today, 10 years back was 800 crores. So people are now believing and they're being educated. I think that's the initiative we're speaking of. And if we kept consistently doing this, you will have. So I personally believe 2019 will be good. Point one, because 2018, and like for that one reason. The second big reason is Indians have so much money which can come into equity markets and propel the liquidity. Point three, companies. Companies will earn better in the next 3 years, and that will result in a propelling of the equity market.
Right. So now in that case, and since we have an audience who is not actively investing in markets at this point, what would be your advice to them? And I'm glad that you brought up actually the example of ETF, because globally what people are investing in ETF, the passive investors, that volume or ratio is much higher than what we Indians do. And I think is the most no-brainer kind of instrument, because not many people can buy all stocks of Nifty or any other frontline index. But here is an option where with limited amount, you can actually buy all the companies in a single unit called ETF. So one, if people are not interested, then how should they split their investment between, let's say, mutual funds, ETF and direct equity? Let's take a age bracket of 25, 30, because that's what I think we are looking at in this audience. So what would be your advice, how they should break it up?
See, everything is relevant at a point in time, like you three things said. What is mutual fund? Sorry, because of the audience not having invested. So mutual fund is I give money to a person, he manages it. Exchange traded fund is I give the money, nobody manages it. You invest in Nifty, for example, where there's no management. Nifty does well, you will do well. There's no human being managing it on a day-to-day basis. Third is buying the stock on NSE directly. These are the three choices. I think these are like different classes. This is like class 1, class 2, class 3. This is like undergraduation. This is graduation. This is PhD. People jump to PhD straight and they fail. And they say, no, education is not for me. It's not a good idea. First, you use a mutual fund where there's a human being. The next is ETF, and the third thing is you go into direct equity. So it's a natural progression. Please don't start with all three at once. That's my advice. You have mutual funds which have existed for 20 years. Use them in the first 2 years. Create a corpus, create an understanding. Don't just rely on them. Do some homework. Mathematics and finance is not an optional subject. Physics, you can say, I don't want to know. But mathematics, you have no choice, but you have to learn it. So 2 years of investing in mutual funds, then you graduate to ETF. Once you are acclimatized yourself to this investing, then at a point in time, in 4-5 years of investing career, you can buy some stocks and create a concentrated 10-stock portfolio, if you so chose to. 80% of the people start with last step first. That is why you see, now we have few lakh broking accounts. Out of that, 30% of the people leave every year, saying that, no, I don't want to invest. In 3 years, everybody has left, because 30% leaves every year. That is because they're starting with the last step first. And that is when you hear a friend saying that, "Appa, stock market beda, I don't, मुझे stock market में invest नहीं करनी है, क्योंकि उसमें नुकसान हो जाता है." क्यों? क्योंकि आपने last step first कर लिया था, इसीलिए नुकसान हुआ था.
So I think to sum this up, all I can say is that we are here to partner with you and make India more prosperous. And I think the tagline of NSE, सोच कर, समझ कर, निवेश कर, is the most apt thing that one can do to be rich in a safe, legitimate way. Thank you so much. Thank you.
On its endeavor to spread financial awareness, NSE Prosperous India will also be interacting with specific audiences to educate them about the importance of being financially aware. This journey started off with the MBA students of the Institute of Industrial and Computer Management and Research in Pune.
When we talk about inflation and deflation, that is nothing but volatile. When you talk about study, few things remains constant irrespective of the market conditions.
I think the initiative is great. I appreciate NSE India to do these sessions, and I also hope that they do the session in future and reach out to schools too.
I'm from a technical background, so for me these things are very new, but it was very good, very intellectual, and the learnings are very nice, that how we should invest, what are the investment programs, and how that will help in our future life.
Times Influence Initiative.